All right, joining us now to talk a little bit more Giants, Ryan Dunleavy, NFL reporter for the New York Post. And Ryan, we got a lot to get to tonight. Thank you for the time. Let me start right there. But it wasn't just execution today. It was effort. When you hear star players like Dexter Lawrence and Malik Nabers calling the team soft, at the same time, Brian Daboll is basically down the hall saying they had a good week of practice. That seems like a problem to me. What's going on here with the disconnect?
Wake me up, Joe, when somebody tells me they had a bad week of practice. I don't think I've ever heard that. But you know what? I also not sure I've ever heard usually opponents say a team is soft. I never heard a team come out. Neighbors said they're soft. Dexter Lawrence said they're soft. Jermaine Illuminor, who had a sideline view because he got hurt early in the first quarter, watched the game. You know, he had like all-encompassing offense-defense view, said he didn't think people were given a full 100%. So, like, those are all, you hear those things. Those are all indictments on a head coach. Those are guys, and Neighbors is questioning the play calling, too. So those are all the locker room pointing the finger at the head coach, and I've never heard that this early, this loud.
All right, in your story for the Post, you mentioned that the Giants knew Neighbors probably wouldn't react well to not getting the ball or losing. Well, it looks like they were right. As you said, he essentially called out Daboll by name. So how do you think that's going to go over behind closed doors here as we head into the week now?
The Giants have done everything possible to cater to Malik Nabers, right? Daboll, anytime there's a hint of controversy, backs Nabers. When he wasn't getting the ball, he backed him over Jones. Like, anything possible, they compliment his play at every possible angle. He does get open when Nabers said he was getting open and wasn't getting the ball. So, like, they go out of their way to make Malik Nabers happy. This is a little different because this is directed at, it sure seemed like the head coach. He didn't say it, but he basically said, how am I supposed to make an impact if I'm not getting the ball till the start of the third quarter? When he was asked how to fix it, he said, ask Daboll, basically. So this is a little different. This is Daboll now going to have to react. He said in Hard Knocks, where we saw that at the NFL Combine, that he was going to be okay with a player who hated losing and was going to, not handle getting the ball well or handle it. Not getting the ball early well. Well, now he actually has to handle him. Now he has a brush fire on his hands.
Yeah, well, the guy who's going to determine the fate of Brian Daboll is owner John Mara. I understand you reporters caught up with him today. Did he have much to say?
He wished us a happy Thanksgiving.
Very considerate of him.
Politely declined comment, which I get it, right? He gave us all the cursory vote of confidence a couple weeks ago for Shane and Daboll, and then he left it open, Joe, when he said, at this time I don't anticipate making any changes after the season. Well, he didn't anticipate 30-0 today. He didn't anticipate having to cut his $160 million quarterback. Didn't anticipate losing to the Panthers in Germany. A lot of unanticipated things have happened that make you think that this could be going in the other direction.
Yeah, well, heading into this game, it's funny because all the talk was about Tommy DeVito, but at the end of it, he becomes a footnote coming out of the game. Daboll said they're going to stick with DeVito. How much do you think you can evaluate what Tommy Cutlets did today behind this banged-up offensive line?
I don't want to hear about the banged-up offensive line, Joe. I don't want to hear it. Yeah. The reason Saquon Barkley is not on the team, the reason Xavier McKinney is not on the team, two guys who are going to be first-team All-Pros in the NFL this year, by the way, is because the Giants needed to invest in their offensive line. So what, one or two injuries to the offensive line and now the whole thing crumbles? I don't want to hear about the offensive line. And yes, you're right. To a degree, you can evaluate Tommy Cutlets behind today's offensive line or in a 30-0 game, but that's not an excuse. Maybe it's an excuse for Tommy. It's not an excuse for the Giants. It's not an excuse for Joe Shane. They were supposed to have built this thing, prioritized it. That's why the other good players aren't here, because positional value. They should be able to withstand this, and they can't. Tommy Cutlets sacked 4 times, held the ball too long again, but he had no chance.
All right, so when it comes to that, how much of an indictment is that on Joe Shane? Because they did go out, they got Illuminor, they got Runyon. Those guys were supposed to help. Obviously, when Andrew Thomas goes down, this is just not the same offensive line. And now you're back to Evan Neal back out there. And basically, up the middle, I saw Villa Veda just destroy John Michael Schmitz, who was, I think, the one remaining member of your starting offensive line from the beginning of the season here. I mean, it just looks like a mess. And this is the same thing we've been saying about this Giants team for what feels like a decade at this point.
Here's the thing. How about Evan Neal plays like the number 7 pick in the draft? Everybody's just ready to be like, oh, they got to put Evan Neal in. He was the number 7 pick in the draft. And the John Michael Schmitz is supposed to be the good offensive lineman of the 4 that Joe Schoen has drafted in his first 3 draft classes. Even if you're ready to write off Evan Neal or write off Josh Azudu like the Giants have, or cut Marcus McKeithen like they did, Schmitz is supposed to be the prize, and he, I think, has allowed the most sacks of any center in the NFL in his second year. Like you said, got plowed by Vita Vea. There's no problem getting like Vita Vea does that to centers all over the league. Yeah. He's supposed to be your second-round draft pick, a building block, and he's not.
Daniel Jones saying goodbye on Thursday. As emotional as he was probably happy he didn't have to explain another embarrassing loss at the post-game press conference. Ryan, I'm going to let you pick up where we left off there. What did you say about this being DJ's best game, perhaps, as a Giant?
I just was saying, like you were mentioning before the break, that Tommy DeVito had to step into the pressure coming right down his face. That's what Daniel Jones had to do for 6 years. Then everybody blamed Daniel Jones. This might have been Daniel Jones' best game as a regular season game as a Giant, because he didn't have to do that. And he got to show everybody what I think a lot of us have known, if you've been paying attention, is he was the punching bag for a lot of the failures of the Giants. But now Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen, they fired a defensive coordinator, a special teams coordinator. They've demoted an offensive coordinator. They've changed quarterbacks. There's no one left to shield these 2 guys from where this team is right now.
Yeah, and you heard DJ mention the relationships he had when guys this week stepped up. Guys like Dexter Lawrence, guys like Darius Slayton said that they still thought he was, the best quarterback in the room. They wished him well, that sort of thing. How much do you think that plays into the frustration that we saw after the game today and the way some of these guys responded?
I asked that question to a bunch of guys, and they said it didn't really play a factor. And heck, they were so honest about everything else. I want to believe them, right? If you're gonna say you were soft and not give it a full effort, then I almost believe that it didn't. But I certainly thought I was watching it before I went into the locker room that this was an emotionally draining week for the Giants, and they know, to use Dexter Lawrence's own words, he's in 60 car crashes a game when he's playing defensive tackle against double and triple teams, and you're asking that guy to do that, and yeah, he's getting paid handsomely to do it, but you're asking him to put his body on the line, and he knows you're not playing the best quarterback on your roster as of a week ago. That's a tough sell. He played his butt off, but you got to wonder if other guys, especially guys without $90 million contracts, are doing the same.
All right, well, DJ can sign with another team when he clears waivers tomorrow at 4 p.m. Reportedly, there are as many as 10 teams interested in him. Now, probably won't be a Thanksgiving reunion in Dallas, but who knows? So where do you think he ends up when the dust settles here?
I think the best situation for him is probably the 49ers. That's where a lot of these quarterbacks go, to either Kyle Shanahan or one of Sean McVay, one of those disciples, and they get right like Sam Darnold did or Baker Mayfield did. They get right under those quarterback gurus, and then they go somewhere else and revive their careers. So that would probably be a good spot. I would love to see him on the Ravens as Lamar Jackson's backup. Lamar is going to get banged up at some time. Daniel Jones plays a similar, nowhere near as good style of play to Lamar Jackson, and it would be really cool to see Daniel Jones, if Lamar gets banged up, playing in a playoff game for the Ravens, and maybe, hey, Joe, maybe even in the Super Bowl against Saquon Barkley's Eagles.
Oh, wow. That would be something else if the Giants see Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl. All right, let's look ahead into the future past the Super Bowl. We know it's not a deep QB draft class here, so what do you think the Giants' realistic options are under center for next year?
So right now, if the season ended today, the Giants have the number 2 pick in the draft. There's only 3 2-win teams right now: the Giants, the Raiders, and the Jaguars. So a lot will change, right? They're not guaranteed to end up 2. They're not even guaranteed to end up in the top 5. They usually have a thing of winning meaningless games in December because they try harder than other teams. Although that might be in question this year. So anyway, my point being, there's 2 quarterbacks. I did a big story this week for the Post, talking a lot of people in scouting around the league. There's 2 quarterbacks most people deem worthy of top 10 picks: Colorado's Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sun, and Miami's Cam Ward. If you don't end up with one of those 2 guys, you're looking at, do we force a quarterback because we have none, or do we try to buy a year with a Sam Darnold type veteran? I think if I had to guess right now, I would say the Giants probably are in position to get one of those 2 guys, because I don't see them winning another game. But if they're picking 3rd or 4th, they should go with the veteran option, I think, as of right now, because the last thing this team needs to do is repeat history. Daniel Jones was a forced pick in 2019. You can't make that same mistake.
Yeah, and even back then, we were talking about it was a weak quarterback class. The other guy they wanted, well, that story ended up being a sad one, but there really was no choice for them back there, and they kind of forced the pick at that point. All right, whomever the quarterback is, do you think Brian Daboll is still the head coach by the time that person gets here?
Oh, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would say no. This is avalanching down on Brian Daboll right now. And like I said, the thing with coaches, and this is not necessarily a shot at Brian Daboll, like the thing at coaches is like there's always the next one. So like a general manager is a huge organizational philosophy shift. A coach is more like, well, we could keep Brian Daboll, or we could hire the 2025 Brian Daboll. Like, you brought him in because you really like the way he develops quarterbacks and his offensive schemes. Well, Bobby Slowick in Houston or Ben Johnson in Detroit, they have the same exact profile. Different personality, but they have the same exact profile to Brian Daboll. So if you're making the case of, like, we got to have him develop our quarterback, there's 20 other guys you could say we got to have him develop our quarterback. So I would say no, especially with the way the locker room is turning right now. It's an ugly situation. If he doesn't win some games, it's hard to see him coming back.
All right, one word, because they're going to yell at me. Is Shane back then, yes or no?
It's a total coin flip. I know that's a cop-out answer, Joe, but right now it's a total cop. I would say probably you're right at 50-50. The odds took a big hit today. I would have said yes yesterday. I can't say that
That
today.
coin is sitting on someone's desk somewhere. We're going to see which way it falls. Ryan Dunleavy, the New York Post. Check him out. He does great work if you want more on this in-depth Giants debacle or where we're going to go in the future. Thank you so much for the time tonight. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, buddy.